that word? Were you saying it was an irrevocable living trust or a revocable living trust?
My family's.
Whichever
I
one
just
that was.
bought. I just bought the
That
whole
was
thing off the record. It's like 2 inches thick. When I go home, I'll have to look.
okay.
Most living trusts are revocable because the grantor's still alive. And when the grantor's still alive, he can still make changes to the trust.
Right. So the living trust is revocable, and you're passing things through that into a irrevocable ecclesiastical trust is how I did it.
Oh, let me tell you something I did recognize. Because I flipped through it. I had time. I didn't spend a lot of time with it, but I spent a few minutes with it. So all of the assets are all set up just like a bill of lading. It resembles a bill of lading so much it's unbelievable.
So all the assets were put into the trust like an
Mhm.
invoice or a bill of lading. They just make a
And
bill of lading for the assets and deposit them into the trust, correct?
and the all caps names of the heirs. Yep.
Right. And then in the trust, I'm just learning this. When you're doing the accounting in a trust and you're putting things into the trust, you need to separate them out, give them a number so that they can be found and recognized. You can't just join everything together and toss it all into one big lump. You got to itemize each and every one of the items that you put into the trust. I yield.
That's exactly how it is. Everything is itemized, down to even letters from the celebrity.
Transfer and conveyance.
You can do that. I've heard. I mean, this is talking for. It's all hearsay. But you can do assignment of claims with a power of attorney over your entity with the birth certificate. On the back of the birth certificate, you need to put some equity on there with a stamp, endorsed. Like I said, an equity, a prayer, some value. And then you can, I've heard people going into the bank, talking with the head of the bank and saying, look, I'll give you this. You can make whatever you want off of it. Derivatives, derivations, special drawing rights, futures, annuities, derivations, whatever, you name it. Go ahead. But all I want is a prepaid credit card for this much that zero balances out and has a balance of, let's say, $50,000-$100,000 each month. It goes back to that no matter how much you use for the rest of your life every month. I've heard people doing this, all hearsay, but that would be depositing it with the head banker there. I yield.
Another thing I could tell you that trust indenture did was took a court proceeding. So the court proceeding started off in kangaroo court prior to the trust being entered onto the record. Once that trust was entered onto the record, the whole everything changed. The judge changed to a chancellor. It went to a common law court downstairs in the basement. Everything changed. And the person who was listed as a beneficiary or heir to the trust got everything they wanted, signed off by a chancellor.
Can I ask, for speaking to that point, in in my case, when I physically had a briefcase with reams, I mean multiple reams of angel claims, which are a treaty in form and in spirit, in nature. And treaties are first world trust. They're sacred by nature, right? They had all the proof that they needed. They weren't merely landscape, they were in every way possible claimed, footprinted, thumbprinted, with witnesses, not notaries. I had everything in the briefcase. I even had on multiple recordings the cop acknowledge that she would be surety and take me before a magistrate so I could hand her my evidence. And instead of handing anything to anyone, I was shown a video conference and was unable to give my evidence to any fact finder, magistrate, judge, executive trust administrator, or otherwise. and then I was brutalized. So I'm asking, what would you do when you have a contract with them? The woman specifically signed on a post-it note that she would be A, surety, B, take me to a physical magistrate where I could hand my briefcase of proof to her, verifying that I was ultravirus outside their jurisdiction. And both the breach of contract causes a harm, and B, that express treaty made firm, certain, and known and sure would, and is certainly, if you're looking to the intent, the expressed intent of that treaty is to place my trust in Yahuwah. It even specifies that phrase that I place my trust in God. It is no longer a trust, it is now a peace treaty, for blessed are the peacemakers, right? So it literally specifies that. And they acted despite having literal, actual bid bonds, performance, contract, blood, surety, every bond I could get. I not just a hold harmless indemnity clause. I literally had a silver bond in there. You name it, I had promise you. After a decade, I had it, and it was all glossed over, ignored, like I was speaking Greek. How do you
Yeah,
compel them
you're
to come to conscience?
you're you're ready to liquidate those bonds.
Damn right I am.
So you can do that two different ways. It depends on how bad they pissed you off. You want to put them on the unemployment
What
line?
is the very most? I want to put all of them in the unemployment line. I want them to
Okay,
be
well,
in prison.
bond them, write a bond in their name, and then liquidate it. Default them on the contract, and then send it into Treasury for liquidation. And when you send it to Treasury, you do glue the contract to the bond. They are bonded together.
So
So you
the
create bonds in the public servants' names. And we can
okay,
do that because they're public servants, right?
right,
So we have unlimited bonding capabilities and they have limited by their bonds. So we way outdo them. So you can
okay.
write some whatever amount you feel like you were damaged, bond them in their corporate capacity. Then you have the contract that you were basically, you have the fiduciary appointment, the duties that you were expecting them to perform, which they failed to fulfill those duties. So you write up those duties in a contract. Once you have them bonded, you even get to sign their signature. We won't go into that, but so you take
Did
that
you say I
contract.
could sign their signature?
Once you have them bonded, yes. If you're set up in
Okay,
Treasury correctly, yes. Once you have a public servant bonded, you can sign their signature. We won't. You don't have to do that to do this, though. That's how
okay,
powerful we are.
all
Okay,
right.
so once you have the contract that you expected them to perform, you have them bonded. Now you just create the default, put the whole packet together with a summary default judgment, also known as a foreign judgment, depending on how you're operating,
Yeah.
behind that default, and send that whole packet into Treasury. Tell Treasury to go in and liquidate these bonds and take all their assets, their spouse's assets, put them on the unemployment line. Oh, you got to put everything behind a UCC1. You send everything, but put everything behind the UCC1, and then once you get all that back from the SOS, then you send the whole thing off to Treasury, and that's how the pro athlete got 125 million back from Treasury.
So
But she set up at Treasury.
here's the question though. There, it seems like there are three separate things, and I'm not sure on the order, if there is an order or if they can all be concurrent. So I hear you saying to bond them. I hear you saying to physically glue the bond to the judgment, the foreign judgment, and I'm not sure what the other step may do with respect to time frame with chronology.
None.
That
You can nunc pro tunc. So you're going to nunc pro tunc your notice of default and dishonor and your acceptance of default and dishonor. So you're just going to go back in time and create those documents. You're going to create the record you should have created back then. So you're going to backdate everything. So let's say, for example, you have your contract with your appointment, right? Because you have the ability to appoint them, just like a judge can appoint a public defender on you, you can do the same appointment via the IRS. We know that by the forms, right? So
Okay.
you're going to go back in time. You're going to create the contract. Okay. You're going to give them their fiduciary appointment. And then, 2 weeks later, you're going to send out the notice of default and dishonor. And then 2 weeks after that, you're going to do the acceptance of default and dishonor. And then 2 weeks after that, you're going to do your summary default judgment. And once you have all that perfected by notary presentment, you're going to put it up behind a UCC1. Within 3 days, you're going to get that acknowledged in your file number. Then you can add your 10 debtors for $10 on a UCC3. That's when you just go to town on their ass on that UCC3. You add all the debtors that trespassed against that contract. You may want to do more than one, but I don't know. I don't know how many people pissed you off, but you have all the power. They have none. You have those pre-existing bonds. I haven't seen them. Perhaps that's something you think about liquidating, or maybe you just liquidate them in their corporate capacity. You have all those possibilities. But
What about their
it's all
personal capacity? Like,
right.
I
That's
don't.
what you're going to tell Treasury to do. You're going to tell Treasury, go in and liquidate them in their corporate capacity and take their house and their spouse's car. And while you're at it, turn off their credit cards and throw them in Guantanamo Bay. Here's an indictment.
I'd absolutely love to see them in Guantanamo. I don't really care if their spouses are thrown in Gitmo. That's not what I'm looking for. I would love to see that
their children should be hung, dude. These people's children should be hung. That's how evil they are.
Yeah, I'll give you that they're evil.
Their whole bloodline should be wiped out.
I don't understand how there are multiple verses that say that in the same capacity that murder is unforgivable in this life because you cannot see the ramifications of it, there is such a thing as blasphemy. And I don't mean saying GD. The term blasphemy is when you specifically make a particular fraud called misrepresentation of one's heart. It is when you claim that someone who is first world, that is to say, special, chosen, and set apart to Yahuwah, is in fact not the Lord God's own heir, but they are a public goyim beast. They are a creature of the field. And when you make that specific misrepresentation, that is called a blasphemy. And that blasphemy is what you're talking about, where you're saying themselves should be hung. I absolutely agree that they should be hung. I would love nothing more because I specifically asked forgiveness in the act and fact. I even got out of I don't know, I may have talked to somewhere between half 100 and maybe 100 people. Of all of them, only two people in all of the people I have talked to said, yes, I forgive you. Please forgive me. Those two I don't want hung. Everybody else, yes.
Okay.
And you can actually just pray for the destruction of their flesh. I don't know if it's Galatians or Colossians, but there's the special prayer. It's very simple. Just pray for their immediate destruction of their flesh, as above, so below.
And can I say something about that?
By all means. By all means.
So, so I'm hearing you speak about this, and I heard you speak earlier too about, where you stand. And what came to my mind is military, provost marshal, to look into that. There might be something where if you presented this information to.
I emailed it to them.
Yeah, and so that they've been made aware, because this is actually
unless you have a default, you're not speaking their language. You have to have a default.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you for that. I did not know that.
So there's something going on, because see, even the Constitution acknowledges the power of treaties. And I was looking and reading at the field manual. Is it 27-10? I've been studying that. And it talks about all the treaties, Geneva Convention, Law of Nations, all of this that are in play. And it's a very serious matter when these treaties are violated. And that also speaks to, say, being bonded, which Holly was talking about earlier. You know, they're supposed to be upholding treaties. Do you see? Treaty law. It has the force of law. When they take an oath to the Constitution, that's also, you know, speaking to treaties. So, you know, looking into that, and again, that 27-10 field manual was in the first couple of pages where they talked about that, and I would consider presenting something like that and having that with my documents. And so then the other part that I found interesting as you were speaking, this last thing you just spoke about, blasphemy. If you look at Law of Nations 15, 14, and 15, they talk about man stealing. They talk about taking somebody out of one jurisdiction, their home jurisdiction, and stealing them out of it and putting them into another. And
That's exactly what happened.
Okay, and listen, the punishment for that, if you read it right in Law of Nations, so you don't not taking my word for it. It exists regardless of whether I'm saying it here. Is hanging. It's very serious. It's very serious. The punishment for man stealing. So you have asserted all. Okay, yeah, those are my thoughts.
They took it out of multiple jurisdictions. So I don't know if y'all remember earlier, I was saying that my 98 was a foreign 98. Well, I mean, all 98s are foreign, right? But so that is, I literally am the responsible party for creating the EIN of my tribe. That specified by an 8832. It specified that, and that briefcase holds verification that they stole from me, that it is that foreign proof, that I am in fact what they took away. It gets better though. They didn't just take me from that jurisdiction into the United States. Then after that I was in the United States in that local county, then they crossed county jurisdictions. So they physically took me from my heart jurisdiction to their corporate jurisdiction. Then they took me into a geographically different jurisdiction than they were already in moments before. So by everybody's definition, even in their little commerce land in La La Fiction, even there, they broke the fictional jurisdiction lines. So by everybody's definition, even the atheists, they breached jurisdiction on its face.
Right, and the destruction of the record or the silencing of the record such that they did not allow you to present all of these things that are in your favor, right? That's what it sounds like. You have all of these instruments and, you know, you...
Denial of exculpatory evidence.
Right, so to deny you your right to present, right? Presentment so that they could see those instruments and it could be put on the record in your favor. That's like, you know, there's rules about the destruction of records. I mean, all kinds of stuff that was so horrible. Horrible to destroy a man's record, to man steal him. It's just not acceptable. And I haven't heard anything that you've said that would indicate that you were in a position of making war with them, that they would have had cause to believe you were a combatant, or you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, in fact, even their highest guy is called a lieutenant colonel, even though the superintendent of the prison, which didn't even have a bond, the superintendent's lieutenant colonel said, I don't think there's a single officer you talked to that said you didn't ask their forgiveness and that you didn't tell them that you're not a volunteer, and specifically said that I don't consent. Every one of them have heard all of those phrases from you. So no one's arguing that with you. I said it to him repeatedly. And on the I think it was the third time I said it to him, he said, look, everybody knows that that's your position.
I'm wondering if that there was still some sort of a controversy because it, you know, going into court is essentially going into commercial war. So, and the only reason they bring you in is that if there's no, if there is still a controversy. So I'm wondering if the question should have been, what controversy is there that still hasn't been settled? You know, just that it's prompting that question because you know, it sounds like you were trying to bring a private matter into a public court, and that is governed under the Secrecy Act, and they will punish you for that, right? That happened to my partner, and he went through all the lawyers in BC and ended up with a judge advocate general, which was their highest military thing. So they brought him into a military court process because there was still some sort of controversy. He didn't understand it at the time, but They did the diesel therapy and essentially tortured him every which way you could figure. And there's still a lot of that going on up here anyway,
Oh,
but
I was
there's
bruised from
seems to
my
be
hip to my rib
controversy.
at me too.
Pardon?
I said I was bruised from my hip to my rib, and then I had my head slammed into the concrete. It happened to me too.
Yeah, that's legal torture. Yeah.
If I were you, I would check out the Hobbs Act, HOBBS. It's already an indictment. The whole act is already created in a form of an indictment. There's 5 places you need to edit their names, and 3 places you got to edit yours. Count 1 of the indictment, robbery. Count 2 of the indictment, extortion. And then you add however many. You got misappropriation of funds, unjust enrichment, man stealing,
Rico.
human trafficking. Yeah, you could just go on and on and on. You send that to the Treasury with your entire packet, watch and see what happens. And then if they're an elected official, you submit the quo warranto, and that'll remove any elected official from office.
I
Is
used
there
the
a
document Toronto
sorry?
in my angel claim against them in one of 6 documents I sent to them. The very first one was Toronto. All of them have been ignored. I did not use
Right,
a
because you don't have your default perfected. You're jumping the gun. You've got to do administrative procedure. It's
correct.
I mean, think about how powerful a default is. They use defaults to evict you, to foreclose, to suspend your license, to put a warrant out for your arrest, shut off your power, put something on your credit report, repo your car. Everything in commerce operates on a default.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Holly,
kindly.
hey Holly, are you also known as Hollywood?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna put a message in your window. I just want to get, and I'll remind you what I'm saying, but you're absolutely correct. These bastards need to be hung for sure. I was harmed. I was harmed in the county jail big time. I was attacked by the guards and knocked unconscious and so on and so forth. But here's what I'm really facing right now is the fact that I've got a brother-in-law is a very evil, wicked son of a bitch that orchestrated the death of my father, right? And so he was claiming he's living on my parents' property, and he was claiming that that's his property before when my dad was in the hospital dying. And anyway, him and I went round and round, but he's one of these real evil, wicked son of a bitch. And anyway, I won't get all into it. I'm still pissed about the whole thing, how it all went down. But I like what you're saying about doing the default and all that, and you get them to agree with with your what you put into them. You get them to agree to everything in the contract beforehand.
We just make them our bitch and tell them what to do, and then default them for not doing it. We don't care if they agree or not. We don't need their consent. They gave up their ability to consent when they decided to be foreign agents of the crown, public servants. Nobody just knows how to go around making them their bitch. They think the judge is the only one that can do appointments. That's not true. Ask the IRS.
Yeah, I don't think we have to appoint them as a trustee because they automatically are trustees.
That's right. We just accept their oath and hold them to it and fucking put our foot on their throat and hold their face to the fire.
Yeah, I was going to say you don't have a contract with them, and they're not under the trust unless you've expressed it and said, hey, I honor your oath and I accept it. Until you do that, you don't have a contract with that public agent.
Well, I thought I'll come from that angle, and I would love to have said that, but remember that when I was on the phone with him, the woman specified in particular, and then she followed it up with signing a handwritten post-it note. So it was both oral and then written. It was actual and then constructive. It was implied and then expressed that she intended to take me and express that she would take me to the magistrate so I could give the magistrate. So the intent was to give the magistrate the proof in that briefcase. That is the contract.
And don't forget, silence is acceptance.
I was just saying everything you said there sounds great, but you still didn't honor their oath and accept that their fiduciary position yet,
It's
even though
in
you
the
asked them to do
chat.
something.
Actually, I
The
cited
letter you
Matthew.
need, the letter you need is in the chat. It's called the Ian Page letter. It's exactly what he's talking about. Accepting their
It's
oath
called
and
the what
accepting
letter?
their appointment. Ian Page, IAN Page. That letter coupled with a few requests for the W-9, the FR 2046. Let me think.
I just want to say, remember, they can lie and tell you anything they want. Let he to be deceived until you have them under the trust and you've accepted their oath. Until you've accepted their oath, they have no public duty to you. That's what I was trying to point out. I think that letter that Holly's talking about is in there. That explains it a lot better than I am right now.
And I keep thinking about the treaty angle here, because like there are so many court cases where the police officers are affirmed as having the right to lie to you, to say anything to you. You know, it's okay. So if they thought you were some kind of an enemy, that they utterly had no duty to protect you whatsoever, and that they could lie to you, whatever they had to do to get you into their custody.
I just
You know,
posted the definition to exactly what you all have been talking about since I got here. It's called Shanghai.
Yeah.
It's called Shanghai. And it even talks about especially on board a ship. It also means the practice of drugging, tricking, intoxicating, or otherwise forcing persons to become, in that sense, sailors, which
There
there's your
again,
ship.
even here cites persons. I don't know if you remember earlier in the dialogue, or maybe you did later, but I specified by literally 2 reams of verifications of proof otherwise that I'm not a person. First world tribes who are faithful, special, chosen, and set apart to Yahuwah are not things. We are heirs. And this heir, honoring, specifying the acceptance, recognition, and acknowledgement for the honor and glory of Yahuwah by the blood, with the witness of the Ruach Kadosh, or Holy Spirit, if you will, has specified particularly the expressed treaty with Father under the blood, under a covenant. And all of those things are in each one of those bound documents.
But were they recorded? How does it become a treaty just because you wrote something down and carried it in your back pocket?
Nice try, though. No, in fact, it doesn't become it because I spoke it. No, that's not what I cited. If you actually did read what I cite, you'd know that, because in all of my angel claims, all of them cite the specific peace treaties in particular. If you wanted to talk about Euphesius Theophilus,
My
it would be
question,
cited. If you wanted to talk about, if you wanted to talk about
Irish,
Guadalupe Hidalgo is a peace treaty.
I'm gonna
Do you
mute you.
deny that Guadalupe Hidalgo is a peace treaty? Yes or no?
No wonder they drug you in there.
The question was, when did you record it publicly? Where is it in the Federal Register? Or how is anyone in the world supposed to know that you wrote a bunch of parse syntax on a piece of paper with hyphens connecting just about every single word, with brackets and parentheses around the statutes and codes, which took you, which is commingling, and on and on and on. What's wrong with it? And where's it recorded? How are they supposed to? How is it a real treaty if it's not recorded and agreed to by a bunch of people? Isn't that what a treaty is? Where was their acceptance of your treaty and the recording of it? That's what was my first question.
I was just going to say that, JW. Where was it recorded? Was it recorded on the record before this all happened? If not,
No,
how do you have proof that it was on the record?
Yeah, you and I have heard his story before, and he doesn't like, he said he wouldn't go. to the probate court because they wanted him to come in person. Well, Jesus wasn't too good to go face Pilate face to face, but this guy doesn't want to go do that. Then he says that they're not doing their jobs right because he can't dictate to them how they're going to probate the name that was gifted to him. So he creates a new name under an EIN and says, hey, I didn't give you the old name. I gave you this one under the EIN. So you can't hold me on the. I asked him what was on the court dockets, which name? Oh, the one on the birth certificate. Yeah. The one your blood is tied to. Yeah. And I'm not surprised. You're trying to go around and get around, and get a shortcut. And who the heck ever heard of an angel claim? I'm sorry. I don't know what the heck that's supposed to mean. And neither did they.
Yeah, how many people don't realize that when they prick your heel when you're born, that's a blood oath that you swore, that unbeknownst to you, but definitely it's on the record. So you need to put something on the record to counterclaim it if that's what you're about. But I was just saying that, when you get angry and upset and you're yelling and you're freaking out, how do you expect to be treated? I mean, I'm not giving them a pass, but my point is you need to remain calm and express your trust. They can beat the hell out of you if you raise your voice.
And you recall we came out that he was on a couple of different Sundays ago, that he would say to them, well, I'll forgive you if you forgive me. He didn't give an unconditional forgiveness. It was a conditional prayer, which is not true forgiveness,
Yeah,
So,
didn't Jesus say, turn the other cheek? That would be forgiveness, right? I'll forgive you. I'll go ahead and I'll forgive. Now you can go ahead and hit me again if you want to, but that's how I take it. You got to forgive first, right?
that system is really there to teach you when you're on the wrong path. And Romans tells you, Romans 13, it's not a righteous man has nothing to fear from the government instituted by our Creator to take care of the unrighteous. And there's a lesson in every interaction with those folks. And if you just look for them, you'll find it. Well, you got to calm down and think about what's going on.
And I want to point out that all their man-made laws are for the heathens that don't have discernment and under God's laws. That's why they have these laws, is because people don't have the discernment between right and wrong of a more moral value. So that's why they came up with this. If you want to be under man's law, go ahead. Or do you want to be under God's law? It's kind of that simple.
And when do angels put U.S. codes in their angel claims? It's kind of a mixture of man's law and God's law right there. But he's kind of insisting here in the chat that, that I'm defaming him by pointing out these flaws in his document. He tried to get me to. Oh, go ahead.
He's not defaming you. He's trying to help you see the light, brother.
Yeah, I mean, pointing this out could actually save his life, because if these things are not clear and are not, corrected accordingly, he could go in with those next steps of like what, Holly and, we were all speaking about. And if his claims if there's something faulty there on that, I mean, the hammer could come down harder. You know what I'm saying? I just.
Yep.
Absolutely. If he doesn't get stuff on the record and start humbling thyself, he can get taken for the diesel ride, if you know what I mean. I'd hate to see anybody get hurt.
Mental evaluation, that's coming next.
Yeah, because like JW was saying, putting in statutes and codes and with trust law and prayer, you're double-minded. So, that's cause for a psychopath.
Double-minded man or woman is unstable, not in one, not in two, but in all of their ways.
In a way, is in a state. Right of way. I am the way and the truth and the life.
For whoever shall believeth in me shall have everlasting life, right? Something like that.
Thank you. Something pretty close to that, brother.
Yeah, so I hope he accepts all this as love. Really. all that's said here.
But yeah, he brings it up in many, many forums because he's looking for ways to get vengeance.
Hmm.
And vengeance is mine, saith the Lord.
Well, he's obviously got to go through more fire.
You know, I wanted to point out to that gentleman, I don't know his name, but I know JW a little bit, and myself. Both of us have been, in the mix, if you will. We've both been. We're not here because we don't know. I've been on the end of the stick, if you know what I mean.
Hey, yeah,
So,
hey, Joseph, at least they didn't strap 2 seatbelts across your chest and suffocate you till you were damn near dead and could only breathe about a breath the size of a dime as your organs swell up and cracked your own rib cage by the tight seatbelts. That happened to me once. I'm not crying about it.
they punch you in the gut, and when you go to take a breath, they tighten the straps tighter, just like quicksand.
I forgave them right away. I just said, there before the grace of God goes I, But I don't do that kind of work. They must be really lower down on the scale and really insecure people, I figure, Like if they were not deathly afraid of the jail workers, their paycheck's going to bounce. Is probably their main motivation. Some of them enjoy inflicting pain and suffering. But I've just realized, hey, this is not just jail. This is prisoner of war. Make no mistake. And he just evidenced that he is an enemy combatant by his words about hanging people and so forth. I like the idea of doing a tax assessment on it, because if they're grifting from this casino owner, the casino owner will go take care of them. And like Holly said the other day, she started doing 8300s or whatever on something. This one clerk giving her trouble. That clerk's husband dropped dead of a heart attack like the next day. Vengeance was the Lord's.
Do you see that video of that comedian lady that was up there talking about the vax and how she took them all and all this stuff? And then she says, I guess Jesus loves me the most. And right the moment she said that, she fell backwards and hit her head, and she was knocked out cold.
I had the
And
same
I thought,
situation.
wow, that was instant karma.
I had the same situation, JW. Remember? I went in there and
Yes.
said my stuff, and the judge a week later died. So
In my mom's case, the prosecutor, because I was doing some pretty interesting stuff, family member, one of the children died, and I said to my mom, I didn't wish that on anybody, but that was her fire, I guess, that had happened. So, a freak accident.